The rain hammered the asphalt like judgment as Bishop pulled his Harley into the empty bus stop, the engine's rumble cutting through the midnight silence. He wasn't supposed to be on this route, not tonight, not after 23 hours on the road from Tucson. But the storm had pushed him off Interstate 40, and now here he was, boots hitting wet pavement in a town that didn't even have a name on his map. That's when he saw the boy. Maybe 13, maybe younger, folded into himself on the bench like a discarded newspaper, soaked through. His wheelchair tipped on its side in the gutter where the rainwater ran black. The kid's eyes were open but distant, staring at nothing. And when Bishop's headlights swept across his face, the boy didn't flinch, didn't blink, just sat there in the rain like he'd been waiting for the world to forget him. Bishop killed the engine. The silence that followed was louder than thunder. Wait, before the next ride begins. If this story already hit you right in the chest, tell us where you're watching from. To ride with the Brotherhood through the next promise, loss, or redemption, subscribe and join the club. Engines up, back to the road. Bishop had seen a lot of things on the road. Seen men die with dignity and others beg for mercy they'd never shown. Seen women wait 20 years for riders who'd never come home. Seen kids grow up without fathers because the club came first, always first. And sometimes that choice carved holes in families that never healed. But this was a boy in a wheelchair at a bus stop in the middle of nowhere. Rain pouring down like the sky itself had given up. And no one around for miles except a man with a patch on his back that said he belonged to something most people crossed the street to avoid. Bishop was 56 years old. Gray streaked his beard like highway lines, and his hands, scarred and thick, had built engines and broken bones in equal measure. He'd been riding with the Iron Reapers for 32 years, earned his patch in blood and loyalty, and wore the three-piece cut like a second skin. Vice President. The title meant something. Meant he'd stood beside brothers through wars with rival clubs, through DEA raids and federal indictments, through funerals where they'd buried men younger than his own son would have been if he'd lived past 19. He walked to the boy slowly, deliberately, letting his boots splash in the puddles so the kid would know he was coming. No sudden moves, no reason to add fear to whatever hell this child was already drowning in. "Hey," Bishop said, his voice rough from cigarettes and road wind. "You all right, son?" The boy didn't answer. His clothes were plastered to his thin frame. A faded t-shirt with some cartoon character Bishop didn't recognize. Jeans that were 2 sizes too big, no jacket. His legs were bent at angles that spoke of cerebral palsy or something similar, and his hands trembled, not from cold, but from something deeper, something wired wrong in the nervous system. Bishop had seen it before. His cousin's kid had been born like that, lived 16 years before pneumonia took him. "Where's your folks?" Bishop tried again, crouching down so he wasn't towering over the boy. The kid's eyes finally moved, sliding toward Bishop with an expression that wasn't quite empty, but wasn't quite there either. His lips parted and a sound came out. Not words exactly, but something close. A moan, maybe, or the ghost of language that never quite formed. Bishop's jaw tightened. He stood, scanned the area. The bus stop was nothing more than a bench and a faded route sign that listed times from 6 years ago. No shelter, no phone. The nearest building was a boarded-up gas station a quarter-mile down the road, its sign long since collapsed. Behind them, nothing but open desert and the kind of darkness that swallowed sound. Someone had left this boy here, on purpose. Bishop pulled out his phone, checked the signal. 1 bar, barely. He dialed Knox, the club's sergeant-at-arms, a man who'd been riding since before Bishop even knew what a motorcycle was. "Yeah?" Knox answered, his voice sharp even through the static. "I got a situation. Bus stop off Route 87, maybe 10 miles north of that shithole called Redstone. Found a kid, disabled, alone in the rain. Wheelchair's busted. He can't talk, can't walk. Someone dumped him here. Silence on the other end. Then, "You sure?" "Knox, I'm looking at him right now. He's been here hours, maybe more. No jacket, no bag, nothing. Just a kid and a broken wheelchair." Jesus. Knox exhaled hard. "Cox?" "That's the call, yeah. But it's gonna be an hour before anyone shows, and this kid's hypothermic already. I can see him shaking." "What do you need?" "I need to know what I'm looking at here. If I call this in, they're gonna ask questions I don't have answers to. And if whoever left him finds out someone found him..." Bishop let the sentence hang. "You think it was family?" "I think nobody abandons a kid at a bus stop in a storm unless they want him gone." Another silence. Then Knox said, "I'll make some calls. Get the name of the county sheriff. See if he's on the take or if he's straight. Where you headed?" "Nowhere right now. I'm not leaving him here." "Bishop." "I'm not leaving him here, Knox." All right. Give me 20 minutes. Keep your phone on." The line went dead. Bishop pocketed the phone and turned back to the boy. The rain had softened to a drizzle, but the damage was done. The kid's lips were blue, his skin pale, his whole body locked in a shiver that wouldn't stop. Bishop shrugged out of his leather cut, felt the weight of it leave his shoulders like taken off armor, and draped it over the boy's thin frame. The patch on the back, Iron Reaper's MC, Vice President, settled across the kid's shoulders like a shield. "Hey," Bishop said again, gentler this time. "I'm Bishop. I'm not gonna hurt you. You understand me?" The boy's eyes found his, and for the first time there was something there. Recognition, maybe? Or just desperation for something warm. "I'm gonna get you somewhere safe," Bishop said, "but I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" The boy made that sound again, the almost word, and his hand, shaking, uncoordinated, reached out and gripped the edge of Bishop's cut. That was answer enough. Bishop walked to his bike, pulled a bungee cord and a rolled-up tarp from his saddlebag. He'd been planning to use it to cover the Harley if the storm got worse, but the boy needed it more. He righted the wheelchair, tested the wheels. One was bent, the tire flat, useless. He looked at the boy, then at the bike. There was no sidecar, no easy solution, just a man, a machine, and a kid who couldn't sit upright without help. Bishop had done harder things. He walked back, crouched down. "All right, here's the deal. I'm gonna lift you, put you on the bike in front of me. I'll hold you steady. We're not going far, just somewhere dry, somewhere with a phone and heat. You with me?" The boy's hand tightened on the cut. "Good." Bishop slid his arms under the boy's legs and back, lifted him with the ease of a man who'd carried wounded brothers off battlefields that never made the news. The kid weighed nothing, maybe 70 pounds. His body was rigid at first, locked in that trembling palsy, but as Bishop held him close, the boy's head tilted against his chest, and the shaking softened just a fraction. Bishop carried him to the Harley, settled him on the seat, then climbed on behind him. He wrapped one arm around the boy's waist, holding him upright, and gripped the handlebars with the other. It wasn't ideal, it wasn't safe by any standard, but it was all he had. The engine roared to life, and Bishop eased the throttle, feeling the bike lurch forward under the uneven weight. The boy stiffened, made a sound that might have been fear, but Bishop kept his arm tight around him, kept his voice steady. "I got you," he said. "I got you." They rode through the rain, the headlight cutting a narrow path through the darkness, and Bishop thought about the man who'd left this boy here. Thought about what kind of coward it took to drive away from your own blood, to leave a child who couldn't fight back, couldn't run, couldn't even call for help. Thought about the choices that led to a moment like this, the shame, the desperation, or maybe just the selfishness that made a man decide a life was disposable. Bishop didn't know the story yet, but he'd find out. The road always gave up its secrets eventually. 5 miles down, the lights of a truck stop appeared through the rain, flicker in neon that spelled out Rosie's Diner in half-dead letters. Bishop pulled in, parked under the overhang, and killed the engine. He lifted the boy again, carried him through the door, and the bell above chimed in the sudden warmth. The place was nearly empty. A waitress behind the counter, maybe 60, with tired eyes and a stained apron. A trucker in the corner booth, nursing coffee and a cigarette. They both looked up when Bishop walked in, a man in a sleeveless shirt and jeans carrying a soaked, disabled boy wrapped in a motorcycle club cut. The waitress's eyes went wide. "Jesus Christ, is he—" "He's alive," Bishop said, "but he's been in the rain for hours. I need a phone, a blanket, and whatever hot food you got." The waitress didn't ask questions. She grabbed a phone from behind the counter, tossed Bishop a set of keys. "Back room, there's a couch, some blankets. Get him warm. I'll bring soup." Bishop nodded, carried the boy through a doorway marked "Employees Only," and found a small break room with a sagging couch, a coffee maker, and a space heater that rattled when he turned it on. He laid the boy down, wrapped him in the blankets the waitress brought, and watched as the color slowly started coming back to his face. The boy's eyes were closed now, his breathing shallow but steady. Bishop sat on the edge of the couch, his phone in his hand, and waited for Knox to call back. 10 minutes later, the phone buzzed. "Talk to me," Bishop said. "Sheriff's name is Dalton Hayes. He's straight, far as I can tell. No club ties, no dirty money. But he's also 68 years old and running a two-man department in a county with more cows than people. You call him, he'll do his job, but it's going to take time." "What about the kid? Any missing person reports?" "Nothing in the system. Not in this county, not in the surrounding 3. If someone reported him missing, it wasn't here." Bishop looked at the boy, still shivering under the blankets. So either nobody's looking or nobody cares. "That's the read I'm getting." "What do I do, Knox?" A long pause. Then, "You do what you always do, brother. You follow the code. You protect the one who can't protect himself. You find out who did this, and you make sure it doesn't happen again. And if that means stepping outside the law, then you step outside the law, but you do it smart, you do it clean, and you make sure the kid's safe first." Bishop exhaled, felt the weight of the patch settle back on his shoulders even though he wasn't wearing it. "All right, I'll call Hayes, get this official, but I'm staying with the kid until we know what's what. You need backup?" "Not yet, but keep the phone on." "Always do." Bishop hung up, stared at the phone for a moment, then dialed the number Knox had sent him. 3 rings, then a voice, gruff and cautious. "Sheriff Hayes." "Sheriff, my name's Bishop Kane. I'm calling about a kid I found tonight. Disabled, maybe 13 years old, abandoned at a bus stop off Route 87. He's with me now at Rosie's Diner. He needs medical attention, and I need to know if anyone's reported him missing." Silence on the other end. Then, "Bishop Kane? That name sounds familiar." "Might be. I ride with the Iron Reapers." "Uh-huh." Hayes' voice tightened. "And you're calling me? Why? Most of your boys don't exactly dial 911 when they find trouble. Most trouble doesn't involve a kid who can't walk or talk, Sheriff. This one does. So I'm asking for your help." Another pause. Then, "All right, give me the details." Bishop told him everything. The bus stop, the wheelchair, the rain, the boy's condition. He left out nothing except the part where he'd considered not calling at all. When he finished, Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I'll be there in 40 minutes. Don't let that boy out of your sight. Wasn't planning on it. And Kane, if this is what you say it is, if someone really dumped that kid, then we're going to have a problem, because whoever did it is going to answer for it, one way or another. I'm counting on that, Sheriff." The line went dead. Bishop set the phone down, looked at the boy again. His eyes were open now, staring at the ceiling, and his hand was still gripping the edge of the blanket like it was the only solid thing in the world. "Sheriff's coming," Bishop said. "He's gonna help. You're gonna be okay." The boy's eyes moved to him, and in that gaze, Bishop saw something he hadn't expected. Not fear, not confusion, but something close to hope. Bishop reached out, rested his hand on the boy's shoulder, and felt the trembling slow just a little. "Yeah," Bishop said, more to himself than the kid. "You're gonna be okay." Because if there was one thing the Iron Reapers understood, it was loyalty. And loyalty didn't stop at the edge of the club. It extended to anyone who couldn't fight for themselves, anyone the world had thrown away, anyone who needed a brother when the darkness closed in. And right now, this kid, this nameless, broken, abandoned boy, he needed a brother. Bishop would be that, until the job was done. Sheriff Dalton Hayes arrived 37 minutes later, pulling up in a mud-splattered cruiser that had seen better decades. He was a tall man, lean and weathered, with a face that looked like it had been carved from old leather and eyes that missed nothing. He walked into Rosie's with the kind of quiet authority that came from 40 years of wearing the badge in places where backup was an hour away and the law was whatever you made it. Bishop stood when Hayes entered the break room, and the two men sized each other up in the way men do when they know they're on opposite sides of a very thin line. "Kane," Hayes said, nodding. "Sheriff." Hayes's eyes moved to the boy on the couch, and his expression shifted, just a fraction, but enough for Bishop to see the anger underneath. "Jesus," Hayes muttered. "How long was he out there?" "Don't know. Hours at least. Maybe longer." Hayes crouched beside the couch, studied the boy with the careful attention of someone who'd seen too many cases and badly. "He got a name?" "If he does, he can't tell me." "Any ID? Wallet? Anything?" "Nothing. Just the clothes on his back and a wheelchair that's busted to hell." Hayes stood, pulled a notepad from his pocket, started writing. "You said Route 87. Which stop?" "About 10 miles north of Redstone. No shelter, no cameras, just a bench." "And you were passing through?" "Storm pushed me off the interstate. I wasn't looking for trouble, Sheriff. I was looking for a place to wait it out." Hayes studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right, I believe you. But I'm going to need a statement, and I'm going to need to take the boy into protective custody." "Social services will want to talk to him, get him checked out at the hospital." "He needs medical attention," Bishop agreed. "But he also needs someone who gives a damn. You hand him off to the system, there's a good chance he gets lost in it." "And what do you suggest? You take him home? Raise him in a clubhouse?" "I'm not suggesting anything, except that we find out who did this before we start making decisions about his future." Hayes' jaw tightened. "That's my job, Kane, not yours." "Then do your job, Sheriff, because right now, I'm the only one who's done a damn thing for this kid." The room went quiet, except for the hum of the space heater. Hayes stared at Bishop, and Bishop stared back, neither man willing to blink first. Finally, Hayes exhaled, closed his notepad. "All right, here's how this is gonna work. I'm taking the boy to County General, getting him checked out. While that's happening, I'm going to run his description through every database I got access to, see if anyone's reported him missing. If I get a hit, I follow the lead. If I don't," he paused, "if I don't, then we got a bigger problem, and I'm going to need help." "What kind of help?" "The kind that doesn't come with a badge. You boys got ears all over this state. Someone abandoned a disabled kid at a bus stop, there's going to be talk. People notice things like that, even if they don't report it." Bishop nodded slowly. "You want me to ask around? I want you to find out who did this. But I want you to bring me the name, not a body. We clear?" "Crystal." Hayes turned to the boy, his voice softening. "Hey, son, my name's Dalton. I'm the sheriff here. I'm gonna take you somewhere safe, get you looked at by a doctor. You're gonna be okay. Understand?" The boy's eyes moved to Hayes, then back to Bishop. His hand reached out, fingers trembling, and grabbed Bishop's wrist. Bishop looked at Hayes. "He wants me to come. That's not... Sheriff, he's scared. He doesn't know you. He knows me. I found him. I kept him warm." "Let me ride with you to the hospital. After that, you do what you gotta do, and so will I." Hayes looked at the boy, at the way his hand gripped Bishop's wrist like a lifeline, and something in his expression softened. "All right, but you stay out of the way, and if a social worker tells you to leave, you leave. No arguments." "Fair enough." Hayes called for an ambulance, and 20 minutes later, the boy was loaded onto a gurney, still wrapped in blankets, still holding on to the edge of Bishop's cut. Bishop rode in the back of the ambulance, his hand resting on the boy's shoulder, and watched as the paramedics checked vitals, started an IV, wrapped him in warming blankets that hissed with trapped heat. "He's stable," one of the paramedics said, a woman with kind eyes and tired hands. "But he's malnourished, dehydrated, and I'd bet money he hasn't seen a doctor in months." "What about the disability?" Bishop asked. "Cerebral palsy, most likely, maybe spastic quadriplegia. Hard to say without more tests. But whoever's been caring for him, or not caring for him, they've been neglecting him for a long time." Bishop's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. At the hospital, the boy was taken into the ER, and Bishop was told to wait. He sat in the hallway, his cut folded over his arm, and watched as doctors and nurses moved in and out of rooms with the practiced efficiency of people who'd seen it all. Hayes stood a few feet away, phone to his ear, talking in low tones to someone on the other end. An hour later, a doctor emerged, a young man with glasses and a stethoscope draped around his neck. "Sheriff Hayes?" Hayes walked over, and Bishop followed. "How is he?" Hayes asked. "Stable. We've got him warming up, getting fluids, but he's severely underweight for his age. I'd estimate he's around 13, but he's the size of a 10-year-old. He's got pressure sores on his back and legs, which suggests he's been sitting in one position for extended periods without being moved. And there are old bruises, healed fractures in his wrists. This isn't acute abuse. This is chronic neglect, possibly worse." "You're saying this has been going on for a while? Months, maybe years?" Hayes's expression darkened. "Can he communicate? Tell us what happened." The doctor shook his head. "He's nonverbal. His condition affects his motor control, including speech. But he's aware. He understands what's being said to him. He just can't respond the way we do." "So he knows who did this?" "Most likely, yes." Bishop stepped forward. "Can I see him?" The doctor looked at Hayes, who hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. Bishop walked into the room, and the boy's eyes found him immediately. He was hooked up to monitors now, an IV in his arm, but his hand was reaching out, searching. Bishop crossed to the bed, took the boy's hand in his, and felt the trembling fingers close around his palm. "Hey," Bishop said quietly, "you're safe. You hear me? Nobody's gonna hurt you here." The boy's eyes were wet, and a sound came out, not a word, but something raw and broken, something that sounded like relief and grief all at once. Bishop leaned closer. "I don't know who left you out there, but I'm gonna find out, and I'm gonna make sure they answer for it. You got my word on that." The boy's grip tightened. "And until we figure this out, you're not alone. Understand? You got me. You got the club. You got people who care." A tear slid down the boy's cheek, and Bishop wiped it away with his thumb, his own throat tight. "What's your name?" Bishop asked, even though he knew the boy couldn't answer. "I gotta call you something." The boy stared at him, and Bishop thought for a moment, then said, "How about Trace? It's a good name. Strong. Means you leave a mark wherever you go. You like that? All right then, Trace it is." Bishop stayed with him until a nurse came in, told him visiting hours were over, and even then he hesitated, reluctant to let go. But Trace's eyes were starting to close, exhaustion finally taking him, and Bishop knew he needed rest more than company. "I'll be back," Bishop promised, "first thing in the morning." He left the room, found Hayes in the hallway. "Anything?" Hayes shook his head. "Nothing in the system. No missing person reports, no Amber Alerts. It's like he doesn't exist." "Someone knows who he is." "Yeah, and we're gonna find them, but it's gonna take time." Bishop nodded, pulled his cut back on, felt the weight settle on his shoulders. "I'm gonna make some calls, see what the boys can dig up. Just remember what I said, Kane. Bring me the name, not a body." "I remember." But as Bishop walked out into the night, the rain finally stopped and the stars starting to break through the clouds, he wasn't sure he could keep that promise. Because if he found the man who'd left Trace at that bus stop, left him to die in the rain like he was nothing, like his life didn't matter, Bishop didn't know if he'd be able to walk away. And maybe he didn't want to. Bishop rode back to the clubhouse just after midnight, the road slick and quiet under his tires. The Iron Reaper's compound sat 10 miles outside of Ashford, a sprawling property ringed by chain link and razor wire, with a 2-story main building that had started as a warehouse and evolved into something halfway between a fortress and a home. Bikes lined the gravel lot, maybe 20 of them, and light spilled from the windows where the brothers were still awake, still drinking, still living the life that outsiders would never understand. Bishop parked his Harley, killed the engine, and walked inside. The main room was thick with smoke and noise, classic rock playing from a jukebox in the corner, the clack of pool balls, the low rumble of conversation. Heads turned when he entered, and the noise died down just a fraction. Knox was at the bar, a beer in hand, his eyes sharp. How'd it go? Found the kid at a bus stop, disabled, nonverbal. Someone left him there to die. The room went silent. Jesus, muttered. Knox set his beer down. You call the cops? Called the sheriff. Kid's at County General now, getting checked out. But there's no missing person report. No ID, nothing. It's like he doesn't exist. So what do we do? Bishop looked around the room, at the men who'd ridden with him through hell and back. Men who wore the patch because it meant something, because loyalty wasn't just a word, but a code carved into their bones. We find out who he is, Bishop said, and we find out who left him there. Because someone in this state knows that kid, and someone decided he wasn't worth keeping. I want names, I want addresses, and I want them before the sheriff does. A man named Diesel, the club's enforcer, stepped forward. He was built like a truck, with hands that could break a jaw or rebuild a carburetor with equal skill. You think it was family? I don't know, but the doctor said he's been neglected for months, maybe years. Pressure sores, old fractures, malnourished. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was systematic. So we're looking for a parent or a guardian, someone who had him long enough to break him down. Knox crossed his arms. What do you need from us? I need you to put the word out. Every charter, every contact, every bartender and gas station attendant from here to the state line. Someone abandoned a disabled kid last night. Someone knows about it. Find them. And when we do, Bishop's jaw tightened. We bring the name to the sheriff. And if he can't do anything about it, we handle it ourselves. Diesel grinned, slow and dangerous. Now that's the Bishop I know. But we do it smart, Bishop added, his voice hard. No cowboy shit. No bodies that can't be explained. We're not looking to start a war with law enforcement. We're looking to make sure the kid's safe, and the bastard who did this pays for it. Clear? Nods all around. Good. Get to work. The brothers scattered, pulling out phones, making calls, sending texts to contacts across the state. Bishop watched them for a moment, then walked to the back of the clubhouse, to a small office that smelled like oil and old paper. He closed the door, sat at the desk, and pulled out a burner phone he kept for situations like this. He dialed a number he hadn't used in years. 3 rings, then a woman's voice, cautious. Yeah? Maggie, it's Bishop. A pause. Then, Bishop Kane. Thought you were dead. Not yet. I need a favor. Of course you do. What is it this time? Maggie Shaw was a social worker in Phoenix, a woman who'd worked with the club before when things got complicated, when the law wasn't enough, and the streets needed someone who understood both sides. She didn't wear a patch, but she carried the code just the same. I found a kid tonight, Bishop said. Disabled, nonverbal, abandoned at a bus stop. Sheriff's got him now, but there's no record of him in the system. I need you to dig. Find out if there's any history, foster care, medical records, anything. Description: white, male, maybe 13. Cerebral palsy, can't walk or talk. Malnourished, old injuries. Someone's been hurting him for a long time. Maggie was quiet for a moment. Then, you got a name? Not yet. Calling him Trace for now. Trace, she exhaled. All right, I'll see what I can find. But Bishop, if this is what you say it is, if someone really did abandon him, then we're gonna find them, and we're gonna make sure they pay. Just don't do anything stupid. When have I ever? She laughed, bitter and tired. I'll call you when I got something. The line went dead. Bishop set the phone down, leaned back in the chair, and closed his eyes. He could still feel the weight of Trace's hand in his, could still see the boy's eyes staring up at him with that fragile, desperate hope. He'd been riding for 32 years, seen enough broken people to fill a graveyard. But something about this kid, something about the way he'd been thrown away, like trash, like he didn't matter, it cut deeper than most. Maybe it was because Bishop had a son once, a boy named Jack who died at 19 in a crash that wasn't his fault, who'd never had the chance to grow old, who'd left a hole in Bishop's chest that no amount of road could fill. Or maybe it was just because some things were wrong, no matter what side of the law you stood on, and leaving a kid to die was one of them. Bishop opened his eyes, pulled his cut tighter around his shoulders, and stood. He had work to do, and he wouldn't stop until Trace had a name, a home, and justice, even if he had to tear the state apart to find it. By dawn, the calls had started coming in. Bishop was in the clubhouse kitchen making coffee and trying not to think about the fact that he hadn't slept when Knox walked in with his phone in hand. "Got something," Knox said. Bishop looked up. "Talk to me." "Guy named Reed works at a garage in Blanco, about 40 miles east. Says he heard about a family in that area, Harper's, I think he said, who had a disabled kid, boy around 13. But he hasn't seen the kid in a few months, and the family moved out about 3 weeks ago. Left in a hurry, didn't pay their rent." "Address." Knox handed him a slip of paper. "Reed says the landlord might know more. Name's Carter, owns a few properties in town." Bishop took the paper, studied it. "Good work. I'm heading out there now. You want company?" "Not yet. This is recon, not a raid. I'll call if I need backup." Knox nodded, but his expression was troubled. "Bishop, if this is the family, if they really did dump that kid, then we'll handle it, but we do it right." Buy the book as much as we can. And if the book doesn't get us what we need, Bishop met his eyes. Then we write our own. He finished his coffee, grabbed his cut, and headed out into the early morning light. The ride to Blanco took an hour, the highway stretching out before him like a promise. The sun was just starting to burn off the night's rain, and the air smelled clean, new, like the world was trying to wash itself of whatever darkness had come before. Blanco was a small town, the kind where everyone knew everyone, and strangers were noticed. Bishop pulled into a gas station, asked the attendant where he could find Carter, and was directed to a real estate office on the edge of town. Carter was a heavy man in his 60s, with thinning hair and a gut that spoke of too many years behind a desk. He looked up when Bishop walked in, and his expression shifted from curious to wary in the span of a heartbeat. "Help you?" Carter asked, his tone cautious. Bishop pulled off his sunglasses, met the man's eyes. "Name's Bishop. I'm looking for information on a family that rented from you. The Harpers." Carter's face went pale. "Why?" "Because I think they abandoned their son, and I think you know about it." Carter stood, his chair scraping against the linoleum. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Then let me refresh your memory. Disabled kid, maybe 13, nonverbal. The Harpers had him. Then they moved out 3 weeks ago, left in a hurry, and the kid hasn't been seen since. Until last night, when I found him at a bus stop in the middle of nowhere, soaked through and half dead from hypothermia. Carter's mouth opened, closed. He looked like he was trying to find words that wouldn't damn him. "I'm going to ask you one more time," Bishop said, his voice low and steady. "What do you know about the Harpers?" Carter sank back into his chair, his hands shaking. "Look, I didn't know, all right? I didn't know they were going to do that." "Do what?" "Leave him." "The kid. They said he was too much, too expensive. They couldn't afford the medical bills anymore, couldn't handle him. Mrs. Harper, she was losing her mind, crying all the time, saying she couldn't do it anymore. And Mr. Harper, he gave up. Where are they now?" "I don't know. They didn't leave a forwarding address, packed up in the middle of the night and disappeared." "But you knew they left the kid." Carter's face crumpled. "I suspected, but I didn't know for sure. I thought maybe they'd taken him to a facility or given him to relatives. I didn't think they'd—" He broke off, shook his head. "God, I should have called someone." "Yeah," Bishop said. "You should have." He turned to leave, but Carter called after him. "Wait, there's something else." Bishop stopped, looked back. "Mrs. Harper, before they left, she was talking to someone, a woman. I saw them in the parking lot one night, arguing. The woman was telling her she didn't have to keep him, that there were people who could take him, people who'd pay good money." Bishop's blood went cold. "Pay for what? I don't know, but it sounded wrong. Like trafficking, maybe, or worse. I didn't hear the whole conversation, but Mrs. Harper was crying, and the other woman was pushing her, saying she could make it all go away." "This woman have a name?" "I didn't hear it, but she was driving a silver SUV, and she had a tattoo on her wrist, some kind of flower, I think." Bishop memorized the details, nodded. "If you think of anything else, you call this number." He handed Carter a card with a burner number written on it. "And if you ever see the Harpers again, you call that number too. Understand?" Carter nodded, his face ashen. Bishop walked out, climbed back on his bike, and dialed Knox. "Yeah?" Knox answered. "I got a lead. The Harpers are the parents. They abandoned Trace because they couldn't afford him. But there's more. Some woman was talking to Mrs. Harper. Harper, before they left, offering to take the kid. Might be trafficking." Knox swore. "You think they sold him?" "I don't know, but I'm gonna find out. I need you to run a search. Silver SUV, woman with a flower tattoo on her wrist. See if anyone in the network knows her. On it. What are you gonna do?" "I'm gonna talk to the sheriff, see if he's made any progress, and then I'm gonna go see Trace. Kid deserves to know we're looking for him. Be careful, brother. Always." Bishop hung up, started the engine, and rode back toward Ashford. The sun was higher now, the heat starting to build, and the road stretched out before him like a question he didn't yet have an answer to. But he'd find it, one way or another, because some promises you couldn't break, and some kids you couldn't leave behind, no matter what it cost. Sheriff Hayes was at the hospital when Bishop arrived, standing in the hallway outside Trace's room with a cup of coffee that looked like it'd been sitting there for hours. "Kane," Hayes said, nodding. "Sheriff, any news?" Hayes shook his head. "Social services came by this morning. They're going to place him in foster care until we can figure out who he is and what happened. But it's going to take time. System's backed up as it is." "Foster care?" Bishop's jaw tightened. "You think that's safe? Safer than leaving him on the street?" "Maybe. Or maybe he ends up in another home that doesn't give a damn about him, and we're back where we started." Hayes looked at him, his expression hard. "You got a better idea? I got a name. Harpers. Family that rented a place in Blanco. They had a disabled son and they moved out 3 weeks ago, left in a hurry. Landlord says they were talking about not being able to afford him anymore." Hayes pulled out his notepad, started writing. "You got an address?" "Not yet, but I'm working on it. There's more. Woman approached Mrs. Harper before they left, offering to take the kid." Hayes's expression darkened. Jesus. You got a description? Silver SUV, flower tattoo on her wrist. That's all I got. It's more than I had an hour ago. Hayes closed his notepad, looked at Bishop. You did good work, Kane. But from here on, this is official business. You let me handle it. I let you handle it, and that kid's gonna end up lost in the system. You know it, I know it. So what do you want? For me to hand him over to you? To a motorcycle club? I want you to do what's right. And what's right is making sure he's safe until we find the people who did this. Hayes stared at him for a long moment, then exhaled. All right, here's the deal. You can visit him, but you don't take him anywhere without my say-so. And if I find out you're working this case on your own, I'll bring you in for obstruction. We clear? Clear. Hayes walked away, and Bishop pushed open the door to Trace's room. The boy was awake, propped up in bed, staring at a TV mounted on the wall. His eyes moved to Bishop when he entered, and something in his expression shifted. Relief, maybe, or just recognition. Bishop crossed to the bed, pulled a chair close, and sat down. Hey, Trace, how you feeling? Trace's hand moved, trembling, and reached out. Bishop took it, held it steady. I got some news, Bishop said. We found out who your parents are, the Harpers, and we're working on finding them. But I need you to know something. He leaned closer, his voice low and steady. Whatever they did, whatever they said to you, it wasn't your fault. You understand? You didn't deserve to be left like that. Nobody does. Trace's eyes were wet, and a sound came out, that same broken, wordless cry. Bishop tightened his grip on the boy's hand. I'm not gonna let them hurt you again. I promise. You're safe now, and I'm gonna make sure you stay that way. Trace's grip tightened, and in that moment, Bishop felt the weight of every mile he'd ever ridden, every promise he'd ever made, settle on his shoulders like a chain. He'd find the Harpers, he'd find the woman with the tattoo, and he'd make sure Trace never had to feel that kind of fear again, even if it meant burning down the world to do it. The next 2 days blurred together in a haze of phone calls, road miles, and sleepless nights. Knox and the rest of the Iron Reapers worked their contacts, pulling threads until the tapestry of Trace's story started to come together. The Harpers had a history, financial trouble mostly, medical bills piling up faster than they could pay. The father, Marcus Harper, had lost his job at a manufacturing plant 2 years ago and never found steady work again. The mother, Linda, had worked part-time at a grocery store, but it wasn't enough. Not with a disabled son who needed constant care, therapy, medication. They'd tried to make it work. Bishop had to give them that. For a while, they'd held it together. But slowly, the weight of it crushed them. The money ran out, the hope dried up. And somewhere along the way, they stopped seeing Trace as their son and started seeing him as a burden. That's when the woman appeared. Her name was Rena Cole, and she had a reputation. Not the kind that made the news, but the kind that lived in whispers, in the dark corners of truck stops and halfway houses. She ran a network, foster kids, disabled adults, anyone the system had forgotten. She'd offer help, offer money, and then she'd take them. Not to safety, to buyers. People who wanted cheap labor, easy targets, bodies that wouldn't be missed. Knox found her address through a contact in Phoenix, a bartender who'd heard too much and said too little until money changed hands. Rena lived in a trailer park on the outskirts of Mesa, a sprawling collection of rusted metal and broken dreams. Bishop didn't tell Hayes. Not yet. Because this wasn't about the law anymore. This was about making sure Trace never had to look over his shoulder, never had to wonder if the people who were supposed to protect him would come back to finish what they started. Bishop rode to Mesa alone, the sun setting behind him, painting the desert in shades of blood and gold. He found the trailer park, found Rena's unit, a single wide with a sagging porch and bars on the windows. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again, harder. The door opened, and a woman stood there, maybe 40, with bleached hair and tired eyes. She looked at Bishop, at the cut on his back, and her expression went cold. "Whatever you're selling, I'm not buying," she said, starting to close the door. Bishop put his boot in the doorframe. "Rena Cole?" She froze. "Who's asking?" "Someone who knows what you do, and someone who's going to make sure you never do it again." Her eyes narrowed. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't. Silver SUV? Flower tattoo? Ring any bells?" Her face went pale. "I found the kid," Bishop said, his voice low and hard. "The one you tried to buy from Linda Harper. He was at a bus stop in the middle of nowhere, half dead from hypothermia. You remember him now?" Rena's mouth opened, closed. I wasn't." "Save it." Bishop stepped inside, forcing her back. "You're going to tell me everything. Who you work for, who you were going to sell him to, and where the Harpers are now. And if you lie to me, if you hold back even a single detail, I'm going to make sure every cop, every Fed, every brother from here to the border knows your name. Understand?" Rena's hands shook. "You can't." "I can, and I will. So, start talking." She did. 15 minutes later, Bishop had what he needed. The Harpers were in Tucson, hiding in a motel under a fake name. Rena had given them $5,000 for Trace, told them she'd place him in a care facility. Instead, she'd planned to sell him to a man in Albuquerque who ran a workshop, disabled people doing assembly work for pennies, no oversight, no escape. Bishop didn't hit her, didn't break anything. He just looked at her with the kind of cold, empty rage that made her knees buckle and said, "You're done. If I hear your name again, if I hear you so much as looked at another kid, I'm coming back, and next time, I won't be alone." He walked out, climbed on his bike, and called Hayes. "Sheriff, I got something. Rena Cole. She's trafficking disabled kids. I got her address, and I got a full confession recorded on my phone. You want her, she's yours." Hayes was silent for a moment, then, "Where are you, Kane?" "Leaving Mesa, heading to Tucson." "The Harpers." "Yeah." "You're not gonna do anything stupid, are you?" "Define stupid." "Kane, I'm just gonna talk to them, Sheriff. Make sure they understand what they did. Then I'm bringing them to you, one way or another." Hayes sighed. "I'll meet you there. Don't make me regret this." The line went dead. Bishop rode through the night, the highway a ribbon of black under the stars, and by the time he reached Tucson, the moon was high and the motel was a pale shadow against the desert. He found their room, knocked. Marcus Harper opened the door, and his face went white when he saw Bishop standing there, cut and all. Who are you?" Marcus stammered. "I'm the guy who found your son at a bus stop, the one you left to die." Linda appeared behind Marcus, her face drawn and hollow. We didn't mean." "You didn't mean to leave him in the rain? Didn't mean to sell him to a trafficker? Which part didn't you mean, Mrs. Harper?" "We had no choice." Linda's voice broke, tears streaming down her face. "We couldn't afford him anymore. The medical bills, the therapy, we were drowning." "So you threw him away?" "We didn't know what else to do." Bishop stepped inside, his presence filling the small room like a storm. "You could have called social services. You could have found a state facility. You could have done 100 things that didn't involve leaving a 13-year-old boy to freeze to death on a bench in the middle of nowhere." Marcus sank onto the bed, his head in his hands. "We thought. Rena said she'd take care of him, said she'd find him a good home. Rena was going to sell him to a man who'd work him until he died. That's what you thought was a good home?" Linda sobbed, and Marcus just sat there, broken. Bishop stared at them, and for a moment he wanted to do more than talk, wanted to make them feel what Trace had felt. The fear, the cold, the crushing weight of being unloved. But then he thought of Trace's hand in his, the way the boy had gripped him like a lifeline. Thought of the promise he'd made. "Sheriff's on his way," Bishop said. "You're going to tell him everything, and then you're going to face what you did. But I want you to know something first." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "That boy you left, he's got more strength in one broken bone than you've got in your whole damn lives. And he's gonna be okay. Not because of you, but in spite of you." He turned to leave, but Linda called after him. "What's gonna happen to him?" Bishop looked back, his expression cold. "He's gonna have a life, a real one, and you're never gonna be part of it." He walked out, and 10 minutes later, Sheriff Hayes pulled up with 2 deputies. They took the Harpers into custody, and Hayes shook Bishop's hand on the way out. "You did good work, Kane," Hayes said. "But you're lucky I got here before you did something you couldn't walk back from." "Maybe," Bishop said. "Or maybe I'm lucky I found that kid before it was too late." Hayes nodded, climbed into his cruiser, and drove off into the night. Bishop stood there for a moment, watching the taillights fade, and then he got on his bike and rode back to Ashford. Back to Trace. 3 weeks later, Bishop sat in a courtroom in Maricopa County, watching as Marcus and Linda Harper were sentenced to 5 years each for child abandonment and neglect. Rena Cole got 10, with the possibility of more charges pending from the federal investigation into her trafficking network. It wasn't enough, not for Bishop, but it was something. After the sentencing, he walked to County General, where Trace was still recovering. The boy had gained weight, filled out a little. Physical therapy was helping with his motor control, and a speech therapist was working with him, teaching him to use a communication device, a tablet that let him type out words with slow, deliberate taps. Bishop sat beside the bed, and Trace's eyes lit up when he saw him. The boy's hand moved, tapping the tablet. "Hi, Bishop." "Hey, Trace, how you feeling?" "Better, thanks to you." Bishop's throat tightened. "You don't have to thank me, kid. I just did what anyone should have done." "No, you saved me." "Yeah, well, that's what brothers do." Trace looked at him for a long moment, then typed, "Am I your brother?" Bishop leaned back, considered the question. Then he said, "Yeah, you are." Trace smiled, a slow, crooked smile that lit up his whole face, and Bishop felt something in his chest crack open, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. "Listen," Bishop said, "I talked to the social worker, Maggie Shaw. She says she's got a foster family lined up for you. Good people, experienced with kids like you. They're going to take care of you." Trace's smile faded, and he typed, "Will I see you again?" Yeah, you will. I'm not going anywhere, kid. You're part of the club now. Whether you're in that foster home or anywhere else, you got brothers, and brothers don't leave each other behind." Trace's eyes filled with tears, and he typed one more word. "Promise?" Bishop reached out, rested his hand on Trace's shoulder, and said, "Promise." Because that's what the road taught you. That loyalty wasn't just something you wore on your back. It was something you carried in your chest, something you gave to the people who needed it most. And Trace needed it. So Bishop would give it, for as long as the kid needed him, for as long as the engines ran and the road stretched out ahead. Because that's what it meant to be a brother. And that was a promise Bishop would never break.